My name is Emma Lake, and I'm an intermediate artist working predominantly in sound, performance, and painting. My practice challenges the binary nature which defines the separation between the intangible and tangible as I seek to translate the surges of anxiety and crossover of senses I experience as a result to my synesthesia. I question the limits of the mediums I work in, utilizing them not only translate my intangible sensory experiences, but go a step further, dismantling the fourth wall to bring the artwork into the viewer's real space. To understand my art practice, it's important to have knowledge of its context. So, synesthesia, what is it and how does it affect my practice? The neurologist Satoic defines synesthesia as an involuntary joining to which the real information received by one sense is accompanied by perception in another sense. This additional perception is regarded by the synesthete as real, often outside the body instead of imagined in the mind's eye. To follow this definition, when I receive the real information of sound, it is accompanied by the sense perception of color correlation and form recognition. Consequently, when I listen to music, I see color and shapes. However, you can't approach an understanding of synesthesia through a fixed binary. Sound doesn't equal color, and sound is not separate to the color I perceive. It is one of the same in a way of understanding and links strongly to my mood and emotive response. Satoic touches upon this in his definition of synesthesia, describing it as something real and an autonomous being outside the body. In my art practice, this manifests itself in the form of my recurring characters, figures who simultaneously represent my mental state whilst acting as a medicinal practice grounded in ritual. Ritual and the rhythmic quality of my process and the physicality of the material aspect of my art practice is central to my exploration of the relationship between the intangible and tangible. The first area of my practice which I will look at is sound. In my sound work, I seek to capture the rhythmic quality of the city and multisensory experience. In my sound work, I collect found sounds which I record on my walks around the city, stemming from my desire to translate the intangible experiences I have into a tangible dialogue between my work and the viewer. This noise of color has always been as real to me as the furniture around me, and it still shocks me that others cannot fathom this understanding. It is through the layering of these found sounds that I illustrate this torrent of information crossfire. I've linked the completed work of the sound piece, The City Stirs, on this slide, so if you so desire, you can go back and listen to this after the presentation. Second section that I will look at in terms of process is my organic response to music. I make it an active part of my practice to take time to draw and paint in response to music, be that a single album or my playlist on shuffle. Artists such as Kandinsky have influenced my response practices, drawing inspiration from his improvisation series, in which, as a synesthete himself, Kandinsky depicts music. As you can see in these examples, the lines of my work are fluid and the figures appear to emerge from the background, swelling out of the undulating colors and forms. This is an important observation as these figures are seamlessly tied into the background, much like my registration of form and color is seamlessly embedded into my acknowledgement of melody. The brushstrokes are loose and I enjoy working in acrylic paint so I can layer the colors which appear to me as I paint. I also work over the acrylic with charcoal, chalk, and pen to accentuate the forms. Building on this, I integrate this approach of organic response into my performance work. I leave my process to instinct as I allow the music and environment to guide me. For my performance at the Spare Rib Art and Music Night, I collaborated with one of the DJs, hanging my canvas on the wall behind his decks. Then, during his set, I responded to the music, which was of the EDM genre, drawing and choosing colors with as little predetermined thought as possible. You can see in this video of me painting during my Spare Rib performance, the real rhythmic quality this style of response painting has. I allowed my hand to fly to any color which felt needed, and I use the word needed because it is a physical draw to a color which just feels right. It's part of the language which decides how I interpret a moment. Additionally, you can see in the next video how expressive and free my gestures are. The video shows a close-up of the painting entitled 1 a.m. from the Spare Rib performance, named after the time I was performing. In 1 a.m., you can see how it features two figures, and these are the recurring characters who I reference at the beginning of this talk. Illustration in the process and materiality of my work is central to my studio practice. However, before launching into a description of the practical side of my illustrations, it's important to highlight their significance. These illustrations are not solely beings of stylistic expression, but are also my companions. I have been drawing variations of them for as long as I can remember, utilizing them as an outlet for the clutter of noise in my mind and my anxieties. They are how I translate and visualize my moods and waves of cohesive dual sense recognition, whilst concurrently acting as a self-soothing mechanism. As you can see in these drawings, these recurring characters follow a similar structure in their appearance and are shaded with methodical mark making. The ritualistic and rhythmic nature of the process of drawing these characters is comforting, a feeling in my hand which I know and can focus on when the outside world is too overwhelming. Therefore, the physicality of these works is so important, as I need to be able to feel the rhythm of the pen on the paper. The weight of it and how it dances on the paper comforts me. It provides a focal point to visualize what I find difficult to verbalize. You can see in these illustrations how these characters have developed and grown with me throughout my years, from characters I drew in my diary to now being central to my art practice. The practice of having sketchbooks on hand is important in my art practice, and I need this outlet to quickly visualize my intangible feelings into an illustrative face or form. I then draw upon these sketchbook illustrations to develop in my painting practice. These recurring characters are interwoven with my painting practice, and harking back to the paintings I showed you earlier, these characters in the music response work appear abstracted and intertwined with the landscape they operate within. In my studio work, I've developed these response practices to become more reflective, really trying to understand the landscape which these figures move within and what they mean to me. The triptych series, They're Real to Me, is an exploration of this. The triptych depicts my recurring characters who navigate the planes between solid black obstacles, which represent the physical world, and more fluid forms representing the intangible synesthetic landscape. Additionally, the choice to display this work as a triptych is purposeful. I was brought up in a Catholic household, and though I no longer practice Catholicism, the ritualistic and meditative practice of drawing these recurring characters echoes prayer. The ritual drawing these familiar characters quells surges of anxiety caused by overwhelming sensory experiences, similar to my Catholic mother's turn to a familiar prayer. Additionally, Catholic iconography aims to render the divine present in the mundane through allegory, visions, and triptychs. I studied the altarpieces and triptychs, such as the death of St. Ephraim, and contemporary examples being Bacon's 3 studies with figures at the base of a crucifixion, to grow my understanding of this. My experimentation with triptychs and study into Catholic iconography led me to contemplate in my studio practice how I could develop the idea of these recurring characters as liminal bodies, moving with me throughout my day while simultaneously only existing in my mind. In my installation work, I fully developed this notion of liminality and the breaking down of the fourth wall. As you can see in these sketchbook drawings, I look to create an environment with my artwork to disrupt space and make the viewer move through the work, surrounded by the same characters who move with me throughout my days. Size matters in my paintings and installation work, and I want the viewer to feel like these figures are breaking through into their space, encroaching on it. The series, The Constant, are 8 feet tall and are freestanding so the viewer can walk through them. Here's a video of me moving through the space. Now, since then I have been creating extension pieces to these panels to develop and consolidate the feeling of these characters and their undulating landscapes to be breaking into the viewer's space. I began experimenting with paper, cutting around the fluid forms with a scalpel. I then moved to wood, experimenting with cutouts to create fluid forms which spread across the floor. To cut these panels, I used a jigsaw, which you can see me using in this video. I enjoy the physicality of this work, and I use wood and not paper so as to keep a continuity in materials from panel to extension. And in this final image, you can see how the extension cutout pieces work and the characters appear to be melting onto the floor and into the viewer's space. I want the viewer to feel surrounded and absorbed into this colorful, undulating environment of fluid and unfamiliar bodies, to see and feel the rhythm of my process and the dominant presence of the physicality of my practice. Thank you.